Imagine two men for a second.
Yeah.
One is this rural gas station attendant and a janitor. He lives in a tiny two-bedroom house he bought for like $12,000.
Right. Super modest.
Exactly. I mean, his main hobby is just chopping firewood. He wears old flannel shirts, drives a completely unremarkable car. But then the other man is a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive.
Oh, so the total opposite end of the spectrum.
Literally the pinnacle. He has an MBA. He was on one of those prestigious 40 under 40 lists of highly successful business people. And he lives in an 18,000 square foot Greenwich mansion with 2 elevators.
2 elevators in a house.
Yeah, and an indoor pool that costs like $90,000 a month just to maintain.
Which is just wild. It's a striking contrast. You have the ultimate quiet, humble life on one hand, and then the absolute peak of Wall Street success on the other.
Right, but here is the twist. Because when the janitor, this guy named Ronald Reed, died in 2014 at the age of 92, he actually made international headlines.
Why would a janitor make international news?
Because he left behind an $8 million fortune.
Wow. Wait, was it a lottery win or something?
No secret lottery win, no hidden inheritance. It was literally just decades of tiny, consistent savings compounding over a whole lifetime.
That is incredible.
And it gets crazier because meanwhile, just a few months before Reed died, the Harvard executive, Richard Fuscon, was standing in front of a bankruptcy judge.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis, and that massive mansion was sold in foreclosure.
It is the ultimate paradox. And honestly, it sets the perfect foundation for our deep dive today. We are exploring the concepts laid out in Morgan Housel's book, The Psychology of Money.
Which is such a fascinating source.
It really is. And the mission here today is to uncover this pretty radical premise that doing well with money actually has very little to do with how smart you are and, well, almost everything to do with how you behave.
Which is just completely mind-blowing when you think about it. I mean, in what other field on earth does someone with no formal education, no background, and no professional connections massively outperform the absolute best-trained, best-educated person in the room?
Yeah, you'd never see a janitor perform a better heart transplant than a trained surgeon.
Right. Or build a safer bridge than a structural engineer.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But it happens in finance because, finance is not a hard science. It's not like physics where the rules of gravity are absolute and apply to everyone equally.
Yeah.
Finance is a soft skill.
Yeah.
It is completely driven by human behavior, by our emotions, our egos, and our psychology.
Okay, well, let's unpack this because I want to push back on that traditional view a little bit. We are always taught that personal finance is just math, right?
Right, the standard advice.
Yeah, you put your income into a spreadsheet, you save 10%, you keep a 6-month emergency fund in cash, and you invest the rest in a diversified portfolio.
Sounds easy on paper.
Exactly. So if it's just basic arithmetic, why do we fail at it so often? I mean, think about your own life for a second, the listener. Why do you sometimes make financial choices that completely defy the math you already know is right?
Well, because knowing the math tells you absolutely nothing about what happens in your head when you actually try to execute it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, we misbehave with money because our specific individual life experiences completely blind us to the rest of the world's reality. We navigate the economy through our own incredibly narrow lens.
So we think our experience is everyone's experience.
Exactly. I mean, think about the sheer scale of the global economy over the last century. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.000000001% of what has actually happened in the world.
Just a microscopic sliver.
Right. But those tiny, isolated experiences shape like 80% of how you think the world works.
So we are essentially extrapolating this massive universal truth from our own tiny slice of existence.
Yes. Which means no one is actually crazy. When you see someone making a financial decision that looks totally insane to you, you have to realize that it makes perfect sense to them in that specific moment.
Right.
It's based on the unique mental model they've built from their lived experience.
A perfect example from the materials is John F. Kennedy. He was running for president in 1960, and a reporter asked him what he remembered from the Great Depression.
Oh, yeah, this is a great story.
Right. He essentially had to admit he didn't have any firsthand knowledge of it at all. His family was insulated by one of the great fortunes of the world. While the country was literally starving, his family just got bigger houses and more servants.
Wow.
Yeah, he said he didn't really learn about the Depression until he was reading about it at Harvard.
Now, imagine putting JFK in a room with someone who lost their farm, their job, and all their dignity in the 1930s.
He wouldn't even speak the same language.
Exactly. They are going to view risk, savings, and the stock market entirely differently. You just cannot genuinely recreate the visceral power of fear and uncertainty in a spreadsheet.
And I think this explains things that look totally irrational from the outside. Take the lottery ticket paradox.
Oh yeah, the lottery stats are wild.
They really are. The lowest income households in the U.S. spend an average of over $400 a year on lottery tickets. But at the exact same time, studies show that roughly 40% of Americans cannot come up with $400 for an unexpected emergency.
So they are blowing their only safety net on a one in a million chance.
Right. And if you are sitting in a comfortable middle-class life, that seems totally crazy.
It seems completely financially irresponsible.
But if you step into their shoes, it starts to make a weird, tragic kind of sense. Because when you are living paycheck to paycheck, when you know you can't afford a nice vacation or health insurance or putting your kids through college without crippling debt.
It's basically a sense of hopelessness.
Exactly.
That-
So buying a lottery ticket is the only time in your life you can hold a tangible dream. It's the only time you can buy the feeling of possibility that wealthier people just take for granted.
That's a really powerful way to look at it.
Yeah. What you're doing seems crazy on paper, but I kind of understand why you're doing it. You aren't buying a financial asset. You're buying a dream.
And honestly, cultivating that empathy is crucial if you want to understand finance. But it also brings us to two forces that govern whether those dreams come true.
Right.
Forces that are almost entirely outside of our individual effort, and that's luck and risk. They are basically siblings.
This part completely blew my mind, the Bill Gates story.
It is the perfect illustration of this. I mean, everyone knows Bill Gates is a genius and an incredibly hard worker, but look at the sheer mathematical luck of his starting line.
Yeah, walk us through the math on that.
So in 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school-age people in the world.
Okay.
About 18 million of them lived in the United States. Roughly 270,000 lived in Washington state. Around 100,000 lives in the Seattle area.
Right.
And out of all of them, only about 300 attended Lakeside School.
Which just happened to be one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer.
Precisely. A mother's club there had used rummage sale money to lease a teletype terminal. So you start with 303 million kids and narrow it down to 300. Gates had a literal 1 in a million head start.
That's insane.
Yeah. And he himself admits that if there was no Lakeside School, there would be no Microsoft. He was brilliant, sure, but he was also hit by a literal lightning bolt of luck.
But the flip side of that story is what really hammers the point home for me. There was Bill Gates, his partner Paul Allen, and then a third kid named Kent Evans.
Yes, Kent Evans. He was Gates' best friend. Gates actually said Kent was arguably the smartest student in the class.
Wow.
Yeah, he shared Gates' endless ambition, and they were always scheming about the future, talking about what companies they would build. He absolutely would have been a founding partner of Microsoft.
So what happened?
Well, Kent experienced luck's sibling risk. He died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school. Yet the odds of a high schooler dying on a mountain were also roughly 1 in a million. It is the exact same magnitude of force as Gates' luck, just working in the devastating opposite direction.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, if luck and risk are that deeply embedded in the outcomes of our lives, how do we ever judge success or failure?
It makes it really difficult.
Right. To me, judging someone's financial success without factoring in luck is like, well, it's like praising a sailor for their incredible speed without checking to see if they had a hurricane-force tailwind. You aren't actually measuring their skill. You're just measuring the weather.
Which is exactly why we have to be so careful about who we idolize. The business professor Scott Galloway has a great quote for this. He says, "Nothing is as good or as bad as it seems."
Right.
You have to focus on broad patterns rather than extreme individuals. I mean, emulating Warren Buffett is dangerous because his results are so extreme that luck heavily skewed the outcome.
So what should we do instead?
Well, if you observe a broad pattern, like the fact that people who have control over their daily schedule tend to be happier, that is a realistic, actionable pattern you can actually apply to your life.
But okay, let's say you do get wealthy. You get that lucky tailwind, or you just work incredibly hard and it finally pays off. How do you keep it?
That is the harder part.
Because the materials point out a massive psychological trap here. The moving goalpost, the illusion of enough.
Yes, this is where we see incredibly smart, rich people do truly self-destructive things.
Rajat Gupta is the ultimate cautionary tale here. This guy was orphaned as a teenager in Kolkata, India. And against all odds, he works his way up to become the CEO of the consulting firm McKinsey.
A massive achievement.
Right. He's partnering with Bill Gates on global philanthropy. He amasses a personal net worth of roughly $100 million.
Which is incredible.
By any sane measure, he decisively won the game of life. But he was hanging out in the Goldman Sachs boardroom. He was sitting at tables with actual billionaires.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Yeah, he was in the hundreds of millions circle, but he felt impoverished next to the billionaire circle.
That psychological gap between 100 million and a billion felt as vast to him as the gap between poverty and the middle class feels to an everyday person.
Exactly. So during the 2008 financial crisis, he is sitting on the Goldman board and learns Warren Buffett is about to inject massive capital into the bank to save it.
Insider information.
Exactly. 16 seconds after hanging up that board call, Gupta calls a hedge fund manager friend to buy Goldman stock before the public knows.
Wow.
He committed blatant insider trading to make a quick $1 million. He ruined his legacy, destroyed his reputation, and went to federal prison.
Bernie Madoff is another prime example of this. Before his infamous Ponzi scheme collapsed, Madoff actually had a completely legitimate, highly successful market-making business.
Just to clarify for everyone, a market-making business is basically acting like a toll booth on a financial bridge, right?
That is a great way to think of it, yeah. You facilitate trades between buyers and sellers, and you keep a tiny fraction of a penny on every single transaction.
Sure.
You don't really care if the market goes up or down, you just collect a toll. And Madoff's coal booth was legally generating somewhere between $25 and $50 million a year.
Legally.
Yes, legally. He had wealth most people couldn't fathom, but just wasn't enough. Both of these men threw away unimaginable freedom because they had no internal mechanism to tell them to stop.
What's fascinating here is the absolute ceiling of social comparison. It is a game you literally cannot win because the goalpost is constantly tied to whoever is standing next to you.
Right. It never ends.
Think about a rookie baseball player making $500,000 a year. If he goes back to his hometown, he is the richest guy at the bar.
Oh, totally.
But then he shares a locker room with Mike Trout, who is making $36 million a year. Suddenly, the rookie feels completely broke.
And the ladder never ends. Because Mike Trout might look at a top 10 hedge fund manager making $340 million a year and feel inadequate.
Right.
And then that hedge fund manager looks at Warren Buffett, who has made billions in a single year and feels like a total failure. The ceiling of social comparison is so high that virtually no one ever hits it.
So the only way to win the game is to refuse to play?
What?
You have to define your own enough?
Exactly.
So if the trap is wanting everything right now and constantly comparing yourself to billionaires, how does wealth actually grow in a healthy way? It reminds me of how scientists used to misunderstand ice ages.
Oh, the Ice Age analogy, the mechanism there is beautifully counterintuitive.
Right. For a long time, scientists assumed that to get an ice age, you needed these enormously brutal, freezing winters, just catastrophic cold.
Makes sense intuitively.
Yeah. But it turned out it wasn't the winters at all. It was moderately cool summers.
Wait, summers?
Yeah. A summer just cool enough that a tiny thin layer of winter snow doesn't melt. Then, that thin layer of white snow reflects a little more of the sun's rays away from the Earth, which cools the planet a tiny bit more.
Oh, I see.
So that means the next winter brings a bit more snow, which lasts through the next summer, reflecting even more sunlight. It is this slow, quiet feedback loop. And before you know it, the entire planet is covered in ice miles thick.
That is the exact mechanism of compounding. You don't need tremendous aggressive force to create an astronomical result. You just need a small starting base and an uninterrupted cycle.
Just steady accumulation.
Right. It is the steady accumulation of small advantages. And when you apply that to Warren Buffett, it changes everything you think you know about him.
How so?
Well, Buffett's net worth is routinely cited around $84.5 billion. But $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday.
Wait, really? That much of it?
Yes. His real secret isn't just his stock-picking acumen, it is his timeline. He started investing when he was 10 years old. If he had started at age 30 and retired at 60 like a normal person, even keeping his amazing percentage returns exactly the same, his net worth would be 99.9% less.
That is crazy.
He wouldn't be an $84 billion legend. He'd be worth around $11.9 million.
I mean, which is still a great retirement, but nobody's writing books about him.
Exactly.
There's a comparison made in the source to Jim Simons, the brilliant quantitative hedge fund manager. Simon's compounded money at 66% annually compared to Buffett's 22%.
Right, so by the math of returns, Simons is the far superior investor.
Exactly. But Simons didn't find his financial stride until he was 50. If Simons had Buffett's 70-year timeline and maintained that 66% return, the math says he'd be worth something like $63 quintillion.
Which is an absurd, completely incomprehensible number.
Yeah, it's basically all the money in the world. But it proves the point perfectly. Time is a much more powerful force than the rate of return. So does that mean all those thousands of dense books analyzing Buffett's specific stock picks are completely missing the point? Like, should the greatest finance book ever written just be a single index card that says, shut up and wait?
Well, waiting is the mathematical reality. But this raises an important question. How do you actually survive long enough to let the waiting work?
Right.
Getting wealthy and staying wealthy are two completely different skill sets. Getting wealthy requires taking risks. It requires deep optimism. You have to believe you can beat the odds.
Okay.
But the moment you achieve some wealth, that exact same optimism becomes a massive liability. You start viewing your good luck as pure skill. So staying wealthy requires the exact opposite trait. It requires paranoia.
Paranoia, like Jesse Livermore.
Yes.
He was the most famous stock trader of his era. In 1929, when the market crashed and sparked the Great Depression, he had correctly anticipated it and shorted the market.
Very smart move.
Right. While everyone else was jumping out of windows, he made the equivalent of $3 billion in a single day. He was basically the richest man in the world.
But getting wealthy destroyed the skills he needed to stay wealthy.
Yeah, he confused his massive success with invincibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He thought he possessed a flawless intuition for the market. So he took that paranoia that kept him safe, threw it out the window, and made larger and larger reckless bets. He ended up deeply in debt and lost his entire fortune just 4 years later.
Wow.
Survival is the ultimate financial skill.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Surviving doesn't mean you have to be right all the time. In fact, to survive over a long timeline, you have to accept that you are going to fail. A lot.
Yes.
This brings up the concept of tail events.
Tail events are the extreme outlying events, the farthest, rarest ends of a bell curve of outcomes. And in finance and business, those rare tail events end up driving almost 100% of the results.
Heinz Berggruen is a fascinating example of this. He was one of the most successful art dealers of the 20th century. He amassed a $1 billion collection filled with Picassos and Matisses.
Oh yeah, the art guy.
Right. Everyone in the art world thought he had this psychic, unparalleled eye for identifying genius. But an investment firm analyzed his actual buying strategy and found that he basically just bought vast quantities of art, like an index fund.
So he just bought everything.
He bought everything he could get his hands on. 99% of what he bought was probably mediocre or totally worthless, but he held on to his massive portfolio long enough for the 1%, the legendary Picasso, to emerge.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and that single tail event was so valuable it covered the cost of all the garbage and made him a billionaire.
You really see this mechanism everywhere once you understand it. Look at Walt Disney.
Oh, Disney is a great example.
Yeah, the late 1930s, Disney produced over 400 cartoons that lost an absolute fortune. His first studio went completely bankrupt. He was struggling to keep the lights on.
400 failures.
Over 400. But then he made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The 83 minutes of that single successful film generated so much revenue, it paid off all the company's debts, bought them a new studio, and funded the Disney empire we know today.
I mean, think about that in the context of your own career or your own investments, right?
Yeah, we beat ourselves up over a project that fails, a promotion we didn't get, or a stock that tanks. We feel like we are doing something wrong.
But the math shows that you are perfectly normal if 90% of your efforts go absolutely nowhere. It is totally expected. You just have to survive the failures long enough for that 10% to hit.
Exactly. Even in the regular stock market, data on the Russell 3000 index shows that 40% of large public companies lose at least 70% of their value and simply never recover.
Wow, 40%.
Yeah. Almost all of the phenomenal returns of the stock market come from just 7% of the companies. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means you have to plan on your plan not going according to plan.
Which is exactly why you need a margin of safety.
And what does a margin of safety actually look like in everyday life?
Well, it's building a buffer into your life so that a failure doesn't become a catastrophe.
Okay.
It means keeping enough cash in a boring, low-yield savings account so that if the stock market crashes right when your roof caves in, you aren't forced to sell your investments at a massive loss just to fix your house.
Right, so you don't get forced out of the game.
Exactly. A margin of safety ensures you don't get wiped out.
Yeah.
You stay in the game long enough for that ice age of compounding to do its work.
So let's say you do stay in the game. You survive the tail events, you let your money compound, you build a margin of safety, and you finally achieve wealth. What is the ultimate point of it all?
That is the big question.
Right. If the goal isn't the 18,000 square foot Greenwich mansion, what are we doing this for?
The highest dividend that money pays is time. Yeah. Back in 1981, a psychologist named Angus Campbell published this massive study. He wanted to track down the common denominator of happiness among Americans. You look at income, geography, education, age.
And what did he find?
What he found was profound. The highest predictor of well-being wasn't how much money you made. It was having a strong sense of controlling your own life.
Ah, it's the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want.
Exactly. And that's the irony, isn't it? It's arguably much harder to find that autonomy today than it was a century ago,
Yeah.
despite the fact that we are vastly wealthier on average.
Why is that?
Well, in 1870, almost half of all jobs were in agriculture. You worked with your hands, and when the sun went down, you left the field. The work was literally over.
Right.
Today, the majority of jobs are for knowledge workers. You are paid to think, to analyze, to make decisions.
Like John D. Rockefeller, who used to just sit in his garden in silence all day thinking, and when people asked what he was doing, he told them he was working.
Right. But the immense downside of your brain being your primary tool is that it never leaves you. It never clocks out.
Oh, totally.
You're thinking about a stressful project during your commute while you're trying to make dinner with your family, and at 3 a.m. when you wake up staring at the ceiling. The modern factory is the day itself.
We feel like we have given up control over our time, which is why people are chronically stressed despite having bigger houses and faster cars than ever before.
Exactly.
So if we accept that modern work traps us in our own heads, making us feel like we have no control over our time, well, it completely recontextualizes why we buy luxury goods in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
We're trying to buy back a feeling of status that our exhausting jobs just drained out of us, which perfectly sets up the man in the car paradox.
I love this concept.
Yeah, the author of the materials talks about a time he worked as a valet at a luxury hotel, parking Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Porsches. And he realized something pretty brutal. When people see a Ferrari drive by, they never look at the driver and think, wow, the guy driving that car is cool.
No, what they actually think is, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool.
Right. Buying expensive luxury items to get respect is basically like wearing a giant mirror. No one is actually looking at you.
Right, they don't even see you.
You think you are signaling your success, but the people on the sidewalk are just staring at their own reflection and their own desires. They are projecting their own need for admiration onto your possessions. They bypass admiring you entirely.
It is a profound paradox. True wealth is actually what you don't see.
What do you mean?
It's the cars not purchased, the diamonds not bought, the renovations postponed. Wealth is the unspent financial assets that give you the ultimate flexibility and autonomy.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's summarize the mission we started with. Being well-informed about money doesn't mean memorizing spreadsheets or watching stock tickers all day.
Definitely not.
It means realizing that your financial behavior is driven by a microscopic lens of experience. It means recognizing that luck and risk are immense, uncontrollable forces in your life. It means understanding that compounding is like an ice age, quiet, slow, but unstoppable if you just leave it alone. And it means accepting that you only need to be right a very small percentage of the time to win the game, as long as you build a margin of safety to survive the failures.
And if you do manage to win, remember the true prize. The highest dividend money pays is not a mansion or a sports car. It is the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today.
Absolutely.
Which leaves you, the listener, with something to think about. Take a look at your calendar for the upcoming week. Strip away the commute, the mandatory meetings, and the endless obligations. Look at the hours that are actually left.
It's probably not many.
Exactly. How much of that time did your money actually buy for you? And how much of your time is currently being rented out to fund someone else's definition of success?
Are you building a quiet, unstoppable ice age of your own autonomy? Or are you just trying to afford the monthly maintenance on a Greenwich mansion that is destined to trap you? Something to think about. Until next time.